Ladies and gentlemen, next up is a gentleman very simply called Alice Spetic from CubeSensors. Put your hands together for Mr. Spetic.
Hi, this is, I guess, the coolest venue that I've ever been for a tech conference. My name is Aleš Spetic, and for the next 30 minutes, I'm supposed to talk about the business of hardware startups. I ran a couple of startups in my career. Recently, Zemanta, which was a big software startup, fundraised in the States. But in the past 2 years, I co-founded and I ran CubeSensors. CubeSensors are small little cubes. Well, this one's not small, but in effect, this is like that big, that measure everything about the indoors. With those cubes, we won Best Hardware Startups Award at Launch Festival, which is one of the biggest startups event in the world, and 4 months ago, we won TechCrunch Disrupt Hardware Battlefield. We started the CubeSensors together with my co-founder in Ljubljana. 2 years ago, we took it from prototyping, production, manufacturing, and actually shipping the product to worldwide. The reason why I want to talk about it is because I want to take out some of the romantic aspects of the startup world. Particularly, my thesis is that startups are business. They are nothing more than that. They are businesses, and they need to produce money. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because quite often, particularly in the software world, people tend to talk about traction, and you don't need to worry about revenue and all that. Well, in the hardware world, you have to talk about that. So I want to dispense a few minutes, basically 3 or 4, and hopefully give you some foods for thought. First, if you look at software startups, when you start it off, it's very easy. There are a lot of startups, so on the top there, it's a number of startups. There are a lot of startups who are sketching their ideas, building prototypes, and launch an app, a service, or something. This usually takes, in the software world, this takes, what, about 2 months, and that's about it. If the software is semi-successful, they iterate, and if they're really successful, they start scaling. Why I'm talking about this, because in hardware world, there are a few other traps. When you start sketching and prototyping, you are quite often ready for Indiegogo, crowdfunding, Kickstarter, whatever, but you are, in my view, at least 12 months from actually shipping the product to your clients. And this is something that nobody is aware of, at least I wasn't, because when your engineer builds a product, says, oh, that's easy, you just package it and then you ship it. Well, it's not. A few things that happen in the hardware world are like, well, things break, don't work, don't scale, or you can go just to administrative problems like certification. Certification for a hardware, for a product, for electronics product, takes 2 months. And it can fail. It failed for us because somebody shipped us a forged licensed Raspberry Pi charger. You buy it in London, you think it's okay, you send it to a certification authority, and after 2 months, they send you an invoice and tell you, oh, sorry, doesn't work, do it again. And all this sums up to like 12 months of work. So number one, when you go to building the actual electronics, allocate a lot more time than for software. The second thing is, this slide should have a title like the shit that software startups never see, is that despite that you work with, oh, I have a monitor here. You work with like usability, backend, user support, software engineering, and all that. With hardware, you have to do a lot more. Hardware, you have to build it. You have to build the electronics. That's usually the easiest part. If you are working on at least some kind of complex system, you have to build your own firmware. That's a software that runs on your electronics. That can be a tricky part. You have to deal with logistics, actually shipping the damn thing, which is not easy. It fails. Our first few packages that we sent actually came across broken. Then you have to deal with things like customs, because customs officers are often not as polite as you are with your product, and they basically tear apart the packaging and bag the whole product into the box, tape it over, and ship it to the customers. You have to deal with design engineering. Design engineering it's in my view, probably one of the most important things, particularly if you're bootstrapping. For example, when you are working on your design, it's very easy just to draw everything up, think how it's going to look, how the usability is going to happen, but at the end, it turns out that all these things have to be produced. So I won't tell you where, but on our cubes, we actually did quite a few tricks in order to significantly reduce the cost of our production. We actually reduced it by roughly 5 times simply by adjusting our design significantly. We didn't know that before we started, but sooner or later you have to think about it. In software world, you don't have to deal with that at all. One of the most important things in the hardware world is that you really have to think about addressing the right market. And basically you have 3 different markets. Consumer, enterprise or business, and tech market. And why is that important? If you are building a consumer product, there are basically just a few things that are really important that's going to trigger a buyer to actually buy it. One is design, another is usability. If you're working with the enterprise or business buyers, it turns out that the buyer is a different person than a user, because somebody in the big company decides it's going to buy your product and give it to somebody else to actually use it. And for those guys, design is not really that important. The important part are things like reliability, serviceability, security, and so forth. And of course, the third market is the tech market. So things that you actually sell to other engineers so they can build their own product. Why am I telling this? Because I often see hardware startups coming to me for advice, and they want to build a super designed product and then ship it to the businesses, and vice versa. They want to build a product for customers, but they just want to buy off-the-shelf packaging or casing or whatever. So, as opposed to the software side or the services, where you actually have to deal with the whole different range of issues, with hardware, there are certain decisions that you make which you cannot reverse. If you change your design, this is going to take you back for at least 6 months before you build everything again that fits, that can be shipped, and so forth. So these are things that are extremely important. Okay, and now to the business part. We talk often about traction. If you look at the left side of the screen, there's a software company that has each quarter significantly increased their app deployment. So this is an app, a freeware app that people download from, I don't know, App Store or whatever. And this company has roughly 1.5 million users after a year. This is a it's a good app. Everyone here would be very pleased to have an app that would have this kind of users. But if you look at the numbers, and let's assume that this is a freeware with 4% conversion, and that the premium offering costs $10 a month, that basically means that after a year, this company on the average will collect roughly $400,000 in a year, which is good. For this kind of traction, investors step up, everybody's pleased. On the other hand, you have another company, which is a hardware company, that just launched a product, sold 6,000 units, and then in the next 2 quarters sold 2,000 and then 1,500 and 2,500 units. Now, I've seen investors and people saying, oh, yeah, well, there is not a lot of traction there and not going anywhere and so forth. But if you calculate the economics behind it, if you take the average margin that I assume it's like 30%, that the units cost roughly $100, this business brings exactly the same amount of money than the software one. The important part, or the important lesson here, is that it's very, very important to look at the business side of your startup. If you just try to extrapolate the numbers that you assume would be a good ones from a startup world, you have a big problem on your hands. By the way, the numbers that are here are not just like made out of the thin air. The successful crowd-funded startups on Kickstarter and Indiegogo in the past few years have collected somewhere between 2,000 and 8,000 orders per campaign, and those are the ones who got funded. These are actually the numbers that are out there. Another concept that is very important in the hardware world is the concept of price. Not the concept of price, but the actual price. It seems that everybody is an expert of pricing and electronics. To whomever I show this clicker or our cube or whatever seems to have an opinion whether this thing is expensive or not, whether it's cheap or it's overly expensive or whatever. It turns out that in hardware, the elasticity of the price is totally different than in software. Here I have on the screen an average, let's put it, an average split of the price of a software service. So you spend roughly 60% on your R&D, you spend 10% on your logistics. On logistics, I mean like things like servers and everything you need to do around it, and you have like 30% margin. If you make an app that you sell through an app store, or you have to pay the Apple tax, which is 30%. In that case, the margin drops significantly, and guess from where? From your pocket. Now, in hardware, things change even more. In hardware, you still have R&D that you have to pay. You have the logistics, which are an actual logistics, so you have to send things, buy things, ship it, and so forth. You have a margin, right? And then you have BOM. BOM is bill of material. If I sell a physical product, it's usually comprised of parts. So I first have to buy those parts. I have to buy components and all that. All this is summed up to what we call a bill of material. Now, if you look just at the left side of the screen, you have the R&D, you have BOM, logistics, and margin, and this already reduces your margin compared if you ship just a software. And that holds true only if you sell directly through your website. Immediately when you start, but we are all kind of used to buy electronics from, say, Amazon or online retailers. Amazon will take you somewhere between 15 and 25% in order to list your product and ship it for you. So with that, you go to the next box, which basically I call here retailer, that takes 25%. But then we are also used to buy electronics in stores. You want to go to a local shop and buy electronic product. Well, in order to get to that store, you usually have to go through distributor, what you call distributing channels, or whatever kind of middleman you have. This guy is going to take you another 25%. There is a rule of thumb that says that every degree of separation from the customer will take roughly 30% of your business, or your profits, if you So that's the reality of the hardware business. And it is actually harsh. But it does have its positive sides. In the last 6 months, three out of four the largest tech acquisitions worldwide were hardware. You all know Bits, Music, Nest, and Oculus Rift. They were all billion-dollar exits for founders, and they're all hardware. The second thing that's really positive for hardware is that it seems that customer loyalty for hardware products is way higher than for software and services. Here are some stats. So if you buy a PC or laptop or whatever, you usually hold it for roughly 3 years. If you buy a smartphone, 2 years. If you rent a service or if you subscribe to a service, on the average, that lasts for roughly a year. If you buy an app on your phone, in my view, even 3 months is a very optimistic view how long people actually use an app on the average. And the third thing is that the barriers for entry to your competitors are really high. That's exactly, well, the reason for it is what I explained earlier, because you have so many problems that all of your competitors have them as well. So one thing with hardware is that you have really, really limited iterations available. If something fails in hardware, unless it's in firmware, so in software that you can actually upgrade remotely, if something's wrong on the hardware level, you actually have to take back the product and ship a new one. A new hardware startup is lucky to operate on margin, okay? It's likely they operate at cost. So that means that they don't earn any money in the beginning. And every single product that they have to take back and send a new one basically doubles their costs. If you do that in software, if you want to change something, if you want to correct something, you simply upgrade it. That's way easier. But again, if you nail it right, it's very easy to fend off, not easy, but it's easier to fend off your competitors because they have exactly the same problems. Another big problem is working capital. In order for me to buy products, or my competitors, to buy parts for the products, I have to finance it. And this is an additional barrier for entry for my competitors. If I've shipped the product already, and my competitors are struggling to do that, they have to finance the whole thing to catch up. So that's a very useful barrier for us. And lastly, there are huge production risks. If you ship already, that means that you have stumbled on a lot of traps that happen in production. At CubeSensors, we've seen like failed power adapters. We had like forged chips on our circuits. By the way, both of those things were actually bought either in EU or the States, not in China. There is an incredible market that hunts you if you are not prepared, but it hunts your competitors as well. So hardware is hard, but there are some huge rewards at the end. You actually have a product there that you hold in your hand, you give it to your customer. Two, if you have any background in any kind of, quote, real business, you actually go through a process where you collect the money from the client and you give them a physical thing back. And there's a huge satisfaction for it. And third, you have a huge satisfaction that you actually build something from the scratch. So that's the reality, in my view, of the hardware startups. I'm available at CubeSensors.com if anyone has any questions. I've written a fairly long guide for hardware startups, hvguide.spetic.si, and that's about it for me, for now. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than glad to ask. I think we have another, okay, 5 minutes. Yeah, go ahead. I repeat it, just, yeah.
CubeSensors, did you approach any open source hardware communities to lower your R&D or try to find?
Okay, the question is, did we use any open source hardware communities? Yes, we do use, as a part of our product, not the actual cubes, but the base station that we use Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi is a great platform to start off with. It's actually not a great platform to scale. But yeah. Anyone else? Okay, not a lot of hardware stuff. Yeah.
Where do you sell the most of your items?
Where do we sell the most of the CubeSensors? Well, CubeSensors were announced a year ago. That doesn't mean that they were launched. After they were announced, we didn't use any crowdsourcing campaign. We just announced that there is. We basically sold off everything that we thought that we were going to sell within the first months. Roughly 70% is US, and the rest is the rest of the world, with the majority of EU. Domestically, we sell, so Slovenia, we sell less than 10. Yes, but not less than 10%, less than 10 packages. And for everyone who is actually operating in EU, just be really, really careful, because there are some really strange laws about regulating EU regarding selling electronics domestically, because you actually have to go through a whole bunch of forms for the items that you actually sell domestically. Immediately when you ship it across the border, you're fine. So we do have some actually almost thinking of not selling in the local country. But since you are a journalist, please don't write that. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Yes, thank you. The question is whether we sell mainly through our website. Yes, only through our website. The reason for it is this. Our batches are still so small that for us is way more worthwhile producing them in EU. Well, we basically produce them in Slovenia. And for that, that basically means that we do not have an economy of scale yet, with which we could afford a margin large enough to finance like 50 or 60% of the margins that those channels require. So right now, we do it only directly through our website. And by the way, I mentioned the price and all that for the reason because we get a lot of comments that how our cubes are really pricey, because you have to shell off a few $100s in order to get the pack. Well, we are sold out for the next 3 months. Now, my economics tell me that for now we have the right price. And through our website only. Yeah.
Another question. Who is buying CubeSensors mostly? Companies for their offices or end customers?
Okay, so the reason why I included this slide is because that was the lesson we've came to it. So the question was, who buys it most often, either businesses or consumers? We did the beginner's mistake in the beginning, said, okay, fine, we are going to cater to businesses and to the consumers. Well, we failed. So right now, our product is targeted at consumers mostly. Even though we do a lot of things that is very useful for businesses, but there was simply no way to market it into the different directions. Anyone else? Yeah. Have we received many complaints from our customers? We got one package returned because the lady did not know that she needs an internet in order for the cubes to operate. Okay, it was a fail on our, well, let's put it like this. A person who tracks our community would understand that we have a product that connects online, but it was a great lesson for us because we literally did not say explicitly that we need to have an internet connection. So we had one complaint of that sort. Apart from that, what happens, and that's actually a really good question, is that when you ship a consumer-grade product, you get measured and compared to Apple, to Samsung, to Logitech, to whoever else who have enormous resources on their hands. So even though with apps, if you look just at software, if you launch an app, everybody understands it's a first version that's going to get upgraded and all that. When you launch an electronic product, consumers often expect that it's perfect as if you had, I don't know how many millions in R&D. And just a small story behind it. I recently have a dinner with the CTO of the largest headset producer. So they're a really big company. And we were kind of bragging around with our products. I took out the cube, so this is our product. And he was like, okay, so since everybody else is bragging around. So we did this. We did like 5,000 units, a test run that we had around for users to test. And oh yeah, by the way, the retail price is going to be around $300. Now, a big company can actually produce 5,000 units per $300 to give it away on a conferences to give feedback. A startup cannot do that. So, yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Zero. Right now, zero. We literally had zero returns from warranties. We had one because the lady said she cannot use it, and but we do have quite a few complaints, to be honest, because of the long queue. If you actually go to our website, buy the product, we charge you, you probably won't receive it in the next 2.5, 3 months. And that's the reason why people say, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not willing to wait that long. But from the product side, no. I had another question there. Yeah? Marketing. Okay, good question. Marketing strategy. It really helped the fact that we, in the 12 months, won 2 of the largest hardware competitions in the world. And that was it, literally. Particularly because of the reason, since we don't have a lot of working capital, and that is our big problem, because you all know, I'm assuming most of us here are coming from the same region, so all of our banks are equally fucked up. You don't get financing. I mean, the banks will tell you that they need 3 years of balance sheets and all that. So for that, you don't have a lot of working capital. If you don't have a lot of working capital, your batches are small. If you win a big competition, like we were like the hottest startup in CES, you sell everything you have in like a week or 2. And then you literally have to hide because your customers are really, really upset because you simply cannot sell it. You cannot sell a product to them because you know you cannot finance it. So that. Anyone else? Yeah? Oh, how do you determine the price? The same as you determine the numbers on the lottery. Literally. Now, I do have a rationale, but now I can admit that rationale came after we set the price, not before. So for the investors now, I have a pretty reasonable rationale why we charge roughly $100 a cube, because 1 cube covers 1 space. in a home, and $100 is roughly a cost of a wearable like Fitbit or something like that. So if you look how many people are actually in a normal home, that somehow correspond to the number of rooms they have, so that correspond to exactly the same number of if you want to give Fitbits to all of your family members. So that's a rough rationale. Realistically, what we did, we were looking around roughly our cost, because we knew what kind of product we want to build. And two, we were just looking at how much people are spending on phones or other gadgets and so forth. So it was a bit of magic. I need to wrap up. So last one. That was a hand over there. No? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, back to the pricing strategy. How do you look if it's a good one or bad one? I'm sure there are some formulas for that.
No, they're not. I'm sorry, but every single investor I talk to, their first reaction is, oh, your product is really expensive. I put it on the internet and I have a queue 3 months long.
So they have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah. Thank you so much.